Okay, I want to start by saying that this isn't a discussion that I've ever really thought of considering. Not that it's a bad one, but whatever it is that I want to discuss for this episode isn't something that I've actually contemplated doing, because unfortunately or fortunately, I happen to be a man. So it's not usually an option for us, but I feel like the consideration and the thought of actually doing it might actually be something to consider, not just for women, but also for the men that talk about the idea of having a partner that actually does what it is that I'm about to talk about. What am I talking about? If you've seen the title of this podcast, and you probably know what it is that I'm talking about. And I do want to get straight into it because I don't know if I have enough time to fully discuss everything that's on this one. So let me just kick things off properly in a nice way because I have manners, and I should have started with an intro. Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a shorter, less edity, no instrumentally version of the podcast, which is usually for when I'm on break from the full episodes, which tells you that I'm on break, but I'm not on break because I'm giving you guys content. But all in all, it's supposed to be shorter, one topic, very minimal editing, and it's basically me just giving my thoughts on one particular topic of discussion. And I'm not gonna lie, like this one, like I said initially, isn't something that I thought about really trying to figure out because, like I said, I'm a man. And for those of you all that haven't put together what the abbreviations are, it's stay-at-home mom. So that's what it stands for. And to be quite frank, like I said, I'm a man. It's not like I'm trying to be a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom. Maybe I could be a stay-at-home dad. I wouldn't mind it to some degree, but there's some social pressure that would make it seem particularly bad if I did that. Not unless if I have generational wealth and my partner doesn't have to work a day in her life. And so I've never really had to sit down and think about whether being a stay-at-home wife is a good idea or if it isn't. And because of that, I've kind of seen those that are as, lucky in some way, and those that aren't, but say that they wish they are, to be, maybe looking at the roses and forgetting that there's thorns there. And I've never had to think about it up until I stumbled across a particularly interesting Reddit post not too long ago where a guy brought up the idea of being a stay-at-home wife. And, he did pose the question to women and ask if they would ever consider being a stay-at-home wife. Now, I'm going to read the post, then I'll get into my thoughts on it, and I'll also include the comments because the comments were very interesting in terms of this one, because unlike other situations where I'm usually discussing a topic, this one is largely for the women to kind of answer and for me to try and figure out if there's a way that we can make this actually work. So let me not waste time and get right into it. So the post is titled Stay-at-Home Wife, and it says, and I quote, "To the ladies in this timeline, my name is Kimathi. I come from Meru. We're a culture that highly promotes patriarchy. None of my aunts or mom is employed. They both run family businesses or manage their homes while their husbands work. I get it that it is totally inefficient to do that in urban places where the cost of living is high and the lack of marriage stability with our generation. Anyways, would you guys consider being quote-unquote stay-at-home moms in the future if your husbands make a decent income? Or am I just a loser having delusions from his mom's basement?" End quote. Now, I'm going to be very honest. When I read this post, the first thing that hit me was, this guy's mom has a basement. Do you know how rare that is these days? And yes, I know people will talk about having apartments and them having basements. No, those ones are for the cars. I'm talking about having a house with a basement. Do you know how rare that shit is? But anyways, semantics aside, when I saw this post, I did actually kind of think about it, and I was like, you know what? This actually does sound like, the kind of reality that a lot of women have spoken about, where they don't want to work, they just want to be some rich dude's wife, and, they can enjoy life and not have to worry about going to work or the job and shit like that. So I thought that when I go to the comments, it's going to be all positive and the women are going to be like, yes, this is something I've always wanted, blah, 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 plug me, involve me in this shit. But when I went to the comments, that isn't actually what I saw. It was actually the opposite. So at that point, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, isn't this stuff that women have been saying online for years? Like, if you look at the way the idea and the ideology of being a trad wife has really, really been out there online, and how so many women are usually like, oh, this is the kind of life I'd like to live. Oh, I want to be in a farm with a couple of kids and some animals. And, I can be making bread from scratch and shit. Like, women have been talking about how they want to be trad wives. But now there's someone presenting the idea of it and they're all saying no. Like, that was even the most surprising part. Out of all of the comments that I looked through, I did not see even a single one where they were like, yes, I wouldn't mind doing such a thing. Every single woman or supposed female that was commenting on this actually did say that they wouldn't want such a thing. And as a result of that, I kind of wanted to look into what would make such a thing a possibility, or kind of just try to turn that no around by addressing some of the cases. But before I can get into addressing cases, let's look at what some of these cases are. And for me to do that, let me go through some of the comments. So I've handpicked like 3 of them. So the first one says, and I quote, "Being a stay-at-home wife is one of the worst things that can happen to a woman, especially in a patriarchal society." End quote. Now, she didn't break down why it's one of the worst things that can happen to a woman, but, I guess she kind of looked at the whole idea of the patriarchal society and she was like, no, we don't want the patriarchy. And, maybe that's all her. Then moving it on to the next comment, and this one actually wasn't written by a woman, or at least I assume that it wasn't written by a woman, but it says, and I quote, "Just let them work and have their own money, dude. Why oppress someone's daughter all in the name of tradition? Plus, if you really love someone, you'll want to always support them to do the level best at whatever they're passionate in. Most stay-at-home wives just end up bored, which leads to cheating or alcohol addiction or even drug addiction, or just end up causing chaos for the entertainment value. So let your partner do what she wants, make your money, pay the bills, and spoil her. She will make her money, and so long as you've treated her right, you'll have so much peace." End quote. Which I agree to, and Mans was definitely saying something there, but at the same time, there was the idea of the family business that was mentioned initially, but I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong about that, or maybe it wasn't representative of what it is that you would want your woman to do. But anyways, let me just leave that one and move to the last comment before I can get into my thoughts on this. So it says, and I quote, "I come from there too, and as a lady, that's not a life I'd wish for my worst enemy. You become the stay-at-home wife being quote-unquote provided for, which is just food and shelter, by the way, and that's how you trade your freedom away to be a performative wife. You'll never truly be happy or rest properly. Most men here believe it's a woman's role to suffer and endure it, since the women in his life survived the same. So even if you're in excruciating pain, he still expects you to fulfill your duties because he brought home unga. The family business you'll supposedly be running, you won't see a penny of that money unless you become so good at cooking the books. Everything you do, including buying yourself a new underwear, will be controlled by the man. You'll be a free and penniless servant in your own home, trying to please the same man who will grow to disrespect you, because whoever has the money has the final say. I always salute those women who live like that, because hey, it's no joke. Oh, by the time you get to 10 years in that marriage, if you survive that long, you'll be an existing shadow of yourself. I've so much I could say, but if you're a lady reading this, never sign up to be a stay-at-home mom. And if you have to, treat it like a business entity. Remove emotions from the equation completely if you can, and always find a way to take care of yourself first, else you'll lose it." End quote. Okay, in this particular case, I really don't think I can say much about it, because this is someone that's lived the life, or at least that has seen the life close. And honestly, I guess maybe she has a point. Maybe it's not a good idea. I'd argue that even from some of the few instances of stay-at-home moms that I've seen growing up, not all of them are bad. At least, when you look at it from this other side, as opposed to, being in there, because I haven't been there. But that said, let's see. Considering how negative all of these comments are, not just from the men, even from the women. Actually, it's majorly from the women. The question that I asked myself was, can I provide a case for wanting to be a stay-at-home mom or choosing to be a stay-at-home mom whereby the woman actually does say yes? Now, don't get me wrong. There's also the likelihood that the opinions that are in this Reddit post are biased because, maybe these women are progressive because they've gone through a lot of modern education and modern feminism and shit, blah, blah, blah. You can make that case. And, maybe if you ask this out in the open, there's a lot more women that would be okay with it. But even with that being said, I don't know if a lot of very educated women would choose to take this route, nor unless if you made it enticing enough for them to do it. And so I figured if I can create a package or if I can discuss a package of sorts that would make the idea of being a stay-at-home mom actually very enticing, maybe more women would probably look at it as a good option. So I decided to kind of look at what this guy was talking about and let me see if I can figure out how to make this actually enticing. Now, first of all, the guy did ask if he was delusional, minus the mom's basement and everything. And I would say yes. He's delusional not because he is making the proposition of a woman being a stay-at-home mom, but because he's making that proposition for a man with decent income. He did mention there that what he was asking on the post was, would you mind or would you consider being a stay-at-home mom in the future if your husband makes a decent income? Now, I would say that if you removed the terms decent and replaced with high or high amount of income, then maybe, just maybe, it'll probably start to turn things around. Because at that point, at least financial stability, provided that you're with this person, is highly assured for the most part. Let me put it like that. Highly assured. Not 100% assured, but highly assured. So you have that one as the first bit. And so from there, you can work to build on the idea of it to make it a more enticing package, as far as packages for life are concerned. Because at least you've assured some level of stability, if you're a high earning person, that at least does kind of seem like it is par for the course. So now you want to address the issues that have been brought up. And the ones that I saw in the comments for the most part are security, more so financial security to be specific, and the idea of freedom to do what it is that you want to do, what it is that you're interested in doing. Now, those two things were the main bits that were kind of being brought up time and time again. And at that point, I figured if you want to handle this, let's look at it from the high income perspective. What if she was having an allowance or she had an investment or a portion of an investment which was giving her money regardless of the situation? Like if there's a long running investment that gives her some sort of dividends or profits, it would probably justify a reduced need to work. Okay, like she knows that she's gonna get her money regardless, and she knows that because she's got investments that have been put in her name, so she's assured that she is at least financially taken care of. So that's one part of it. So now we've sorted out the financial security side. Then now you look at the freedom side, or at least the freedom to do what it is that she'd like to do. And at that point, you realize that now you might have hit a snag, because a lot of things that people say they'd like to do as like a career or like a professional thing usually require a bunch of hard work, long hours and stuff like that. And that kind of beats the purpose of the stay-at-home partner. But then I thought about the idea of the small businesses that some of the stay-at-home moms that the guy that posted this post on Reddit was busy talking about. And I also thought about the trad wives on TikTok, and something kind of hit me. What if she was having the freedom to do whatever it is she wanted to do, but she was a stay-at-home mom first? So she can be a stay-at-home mom and, for example, do baking content or cooking content. Or she can take up a course that she'd like to do and, like enjoy whatever benefits that come with that. Whether it's attending conferences, whether it's just learning more on the subject matter, whether it's talking to people about it, even though it involves her probably even choosing to start a podcast like this one. Like, she could basically do all of these things, provided that they're not taking up too much time. So she has the freedom whereby she'll only have to wake up to ensure that the husband is ready for work, if she really needs to, but more so that the kids are ready to go to school, or, she can get up and like drop the kids at school and shit. Like, that one makes a lot more sense. And then after that, she's kind of free to do her thing, whether it's, staying at home, whether it's taking up her course. She could basically do all of that. So you look at it, and at that point, she doesn't need to actually worry about not having freedom. She has the freedom to do whatever it is that she wants. It's just that now, that freedom is actually assured because she doesn't have to do it for survival. So, if she wants to turn into the trad wives that you see on TikTok, who basically will decide to make bread and pasta from scratch, like, it makes a lot of sense why she'd do that. And, granted, that actually does fall under something that is referred to as conspicuous waste, whereby high status and high income people show how high status or high income they are, not by owning goods of great value, but by owning their time and using it to do tasks that are, very effort and time intensive, even though they don't carry much gain. She's not making the bread or the pasta to sell it. There's no extra money from that. And it would probably be easier, maybe even cheaper, to get it from the supermarket. But she is going to make that from scratch because she has the time and she can definitely do that. So at that point in time, everything looks pretty good. But now the last thing that most people oftentimes forget to think about is usually the social circle. If you're a working class professional woman, your social circle will probably be doing roughly the same things. And even if, you guys started off from school together, like, you guys can kind of keep track of each other and you can complain about other things. And, a lot of those things will kind of be tied in. The job sucks, or, the job is stressing me out like this and that. Or, my husband this and that, my kids this and that. But now when you're a stay-at-home mom, you have a different set of problems. You don't have the issues like workplace drama because your workplace is at home. For the most part, you don't really have to do much of the so-called work that professionals and working class people out here have to do, because you're not doing it because you have to do it. You do it probably because you want to do it, or just to keep yourself busy. So there could be a disconnect in the experience, which can drive some friendships, apart. But for the most part, provided that she has something that she's doing that's fun, she probably wouldn't mind meeting up with a couple of friends here and there every so often, because time is kind of an asset that she has quite a bit of at that point. But at the end of it, even then, I still believe that some women would still be over there busy making it seem as though she's signed off her ability to stand up for herself because now she's a stay-at-home mom. Which brings me to the truth that is, women today just don't accept it, and they don't want to be true stay-at-home moms, but they do love the optionality that it gives you if you are a stay-at-home mom to a high-income earner. Or, at the very least, the thought of it. Which brings me to my conclusion in all of this, which is, I still think it is a very viable idea, the idea of being a stay-at-home mom, for quite a number of women, but if today's society is anything to go by, especially with a lot of the stuff that's happened, such as feminism and, a lot of the negative stories we've heard, it only sounds good in theory for most women, but you actually offer the idea of being a stay-at-home mom in its entirety, you might not get that many women actually saying yes to it. But, the thought about it does usually seem pretty good in their heads. And when they talk about it online. Although, then again, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I've been spending the wrong amount of time on the wrong part of the internet. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. Full episodes resume from the next episode. And I will catch you guys on the next break.